item tonight. Paul is part of, but he's not the whole kit and caboodle, I would say, because Bob Wimmer from Navitas and Art Patron from our Deputy DPW Commissioner and head of the sewer department, along with Paul, are going to give a presentation on the potential bonding increase on the sanitary sewer plant project. As everybody knows, we have a public hearing 2 weeks from tomorrow here in this boardroom at 6:30 p.m. To hear what people think about that increase in the bonding. And then when they're done with that, Paul is going to present a separate presentation without Bob and Art on the Comida and host community agreement effect and taxes on the Fairlight project. So I'll hand the baton to Bob, Paul, Art.
Thank you, Supervisor. So, obviously, as you just mentioned, there's a large project really underway at the sewer department. It was signed contract a couple weeks ago. The equipment is being mobilized as we speak, and we just sort of wanted to go through some of the impacts of the capital project that we have. So, as we all know, Fairlight is come to town. They are coming to town with their 750,000 square foot facility, supporting up to 80,000 hours a day, creating 250,000 new jobs, and that impact, that facility is equivalent of 9,000 new homes coming into Webster. So, part of what we will be doing and constructing at the plant is really building out the excess reserve that we need to have at the plant. Fairlight will be taking all that we have, and we need to, by regulatory compliance, have excess reserve, and that will also allow any continued growth within the town. So, the project is sort of, we broke it out into a couple different ways to look at it. One, as we've talked numerous times, is the asset renewal portion of it. Is really just replacing what we have currently that is antiquated and obsolete. Then there's the resource recovery, revenue, and efficiency projects. The biosolids, the organic waste receiving, and the processing facility. And this is going to create the fertilizer for us, save energy, and actually create different revenue streams. And then there's the capacity recovery portion of it. Again, this is utilizing, Fairlight is utilizing all of our current excess capacity, and we need to build that out again. That's going to include expansion of our grit removal system, our headworks, primary clarifiers, aeration basins, diffusers, and really increasing the size of most of our processes. So as we've been moving forward and trying to navigate the project, tying it into Fairlight and trying to match Fairlight's timeline, we created two different lists, if you will, items that are unaffected by Fairlight, which we are starting construction on now, admin buildings, site prep, some of the headworks, you'll see some tankage, truck scales, and SCADA controls. SCADA is the computer system that we utilize to control the entire plant. Right now we control maybe about 60% of it, so Rick and his team need those electronic controls and the data inputs. Obviously upgrading security, fiber optics, site lighting, fire protection, and so on. The second portion of this are the items that we will be upsizing, if you will. We talked about grit removal, upsizing primary clarifiers, aeration basins, the electricity service to some of our buildings, some of the switch gear, aeration blowers, which are in dire need of replacement. Rick is struggling with those on a daily basis. Eric's storage digester tanks are flaring gas collection systems off the digesters. Currently our flare does not work and it's out of compliance. Biosolid dewatering, and the dryer, which will get us that fertilizer product and limit our reliance on landfills. So, nice overview. I think this was from Karen of the facility and some of the items that are going to be touched. Again, aeration systems, clarifiers, new biosolids building. You see a trickling filter in there. That is the village's, and it's pretty much defunct, hasn't been used in years. We'll be gathering that real estate. See the headworks building and our chemical feed and aeration lower buildings. Can you talk about this?
Certainly. So one of the tenets of this project has been to find ways to get the most value for the capital that is invested in the project. So the asset renewal component of it that Art went through, these are elements that there's not a lot of opportunity to find either additional savings or revenue. So this is the analogy has been, this is maintaining the house. So this is replacing the roof, this is replacing the siding. There's not a lot of savings that come from that. The other half of the project is the components that provide either a savings, so reducing the electrical consumption, reducing the amount of money that is spent sending sludge to the landfill, the amount of natural gas consumption that is utilized to heat the buildings and the digesters, and also the ability to bring in other revenue streams, such as the high-strength organic waste. So this is waste from the production of different food products that can be converted in the anaerobic digester. So this is something where waste haulers would provide revenue to the town in order to take care of that waste. And then also talking about a little bit of the recovery of the capacity that Fairlife will be utilizing, is that Fairlife as a commercial industrial user will be paying a cost for the treatment of their wastewater. So that's a service that Webster will be providing, but that comes with a significant amount of revenue in terms of treating that wastewater. So that capacity recovery also is, in effect, a revenue generating savings mechanism. So all told, all of that project, both the asset renewal and the resource recovery and the capacity recovery, total out to $81.5 million, but do generate new revenue and savings of $6 million on an annual basis overall. So when you look at doing just the asset renewal, which provides no savings, that's just an investment that has to be made. But when combined with the remainder of the project, provides an opportunity to generate additional savings. And Paul has some examples of how this impacts the rate structure.
Yeah, this next slide actually shows the deviation from the current sewer rent, which is made up of the O&M rate and the capital charge. For 2023, it's approximately $232 in total. So the green line is asset renewal only. It's that $38 million that Bob just referred to. So as you can see, the cost, the increase of the rate stays consistently high year to year if you're only to do asset renewal. The blue line factors in the cost savings and the additional revenue that Bob had previously mentioned. So as you can see, 2025 is a tough year. This projection has been done without accounting for any grants. We don't have any grant commitments at this point, although we're hopeful. So this is what we consider to be worst case scenario. So 2025 is tough because you've got the full load of the debt service coming in, but Coca-Cola Fairlife won't be operational until around October 1st of 25, So you're only gonna get at most a quarter year of the revenue. So it's a tough year to get through. Once we get past 25, things smooth out. The rate should drop to around $300. Of course, it'll go up over time due to inflation and other costs. But it becomes much more manageable once they're fully operational. On the next slide, this breaks down the various cost savings and revenue. The first block actually shows the cost of the debt service for the project, other than the Fairline piece. It's about $4.1 million a year. The second block shows $1.7 million, which is the debt service on the Coca-Cola Fairline piece. That's followed by increased cost of about $1 million. I should say that these dollar amounts are actually based on a projected 30-year average. So, but those increased costs include things like gas, electric, and chemicals, because obviously you're going to be treating 1.5 million more gallons of waste a day, so it's going to take a lot more the chemicals and everything else you use to treat it. The fourth red block is actually the average 30-year cost for compensation and employee benefits for some new employees that plan to be added. That's about $510,000. And then the green are the revenues. The first is outside liquid waste revenue, about $800,000 a year. And we have outside biosolids cake revenue, about $620,000. And operating cost savings of about, I think that's $970,000 a year. And that comes mainly from sludge hauling. As you know, we do transport most of the sludge right now to a landfill, and it's becoming more expensive each year. It's projected to go up and up and up. So a significant amount of savings will be generated by drying the sludge, and can be sold as fertilizer or utilized otherwise. And electricity costs too will be some savings there. The fourth green block, those are the commercial buildings for EDUs. Basically, Fairlight will be charged an industrial use charge, which we think now is going to be around $2.5 or $2.6 million a year. In addition to that, they'll be billed an EDU, so for every 60,000 gallons that we process, they're charged one EDU, which is that $232 that I mentioned previously, which is the current year rate. That may be higher or lower in the future. They'll be charged that for each 60,000 gallons. So we expect that will generate quite a bit of revenue. That could be in the range of $2 to $3 million a year once we get rolling. And then the last block, the $710,000, that's basically the amount that the residential ratepayers will owe annually when everything is done. And that will be just baked into the rate.
And again, Paul, this includes no grants.
Once again, this includes no grants. We consider it worst case scenario. And the last page, I took a look at the revenue creation and the cost savings, and I compared it to the remaining amounts of debt service principal, and just to demonstrate that over time the project actually does cover quite a bit of the debt service costs, even though it's a staggering number to borrow. We'll have 51% of the cost covered by 2025, and then it's in the 90% range after that. 2024 is zero because the plan is to pay interest only on the bonds in 2024, and Fairlight's really not going to be operational until October 1st of 25, so there won't be much or any revenue to offset at that point. So that's the most of it. Any questions or comments?
Well, you know, and I think we've averaged about $4 a month as an increase in it's not cumulative.
I did forget to mention that.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out that for each $1 million that we receive as a grant, that basically equates to $4 on the EDU. So for every $1 million we get, the EDU should go down by $4. So if we get 10 million, it should go down $40. Because that's 20 million less we have to borrow.
And this really drives to building a predictable and reliable wastewater treatment plant. I
We
think-
certainly don't have now.
No, we don't, and so the board is aware of this. We've had a valve failure, which is an obsolete valve. I talked to Patty a little bit about it today, and Bob and Rick, and really the whole team. We found a valve in California, which will be second day airing, to get it here in next week sometime. But that's how old the system is, and the lengths we're having to go to.
Can't believe it, Bob.
Again,
Well, again, I want to thank you for putting it together. I know that we all, at some point in this process, have had sticker shock when we've looked at these numbers. I know we've been under criticism from some people out in the community. I'm hoping that with this presentation tonight, they'll look at things and realize why we're attempting to do the things that we are.
You know, Patty, I would like to add on to that. I was going to jump in when Paul was talking about the debt management. And that is such a key thing. I live by that in my personal life. And really none of this happens, honestly, without, Paul's guidance, going into these projects and so forth. So everything that he is doing on the finance end is really helping us all as department heads navigate through these numbers. So I just want to throw that out there, and this project is really, it's really an example of that. We run everything through Paul and make sure it passes muster and through those processes and procedures that he's running.
Jenny?
Well, thank you for the presentation. I learned a lot, and I hope everybody else will too. So we got a lot of work ahead of us, and I know that all can stay to the right track.
Well, there's not a doubt in anyone's mind that we will need significant upgrades to the sewage treatment plant. I was up there, and I think it was Monday or Tuesday. There's a significant amount of money being spent, obviously, to facilitate Fairlight coming to Webster, which is a good thing. And I know that there's some unanswered questions that we're looking forward to getting, but again, these upgrades are much needed.
Bill?
The upgrades are needed. I hope the projections are correct. That's my only concern.
Well, one of the nice things,
Revenue projections are just that, they're projections.
they are.
And if we don't reach them,
Yeah.
then it's a different story.
And that's, I know this has been I think I figured out that since June of 21, in the last 100 board meetings in the last 2 years, workshops or regular board meetings, you know that over 60% of them, you guys know I like my numbers, over 60% of our board meetings have had this sewer project as resolutions on it or presentations on it. We've spent a lot of time on this. And early on, in that June of 21 through December of 22, was the town board's education on something that nobody had ever dealt with before, which was an Article 9 energy performance contract. Because heretofore, in this town, everything had been done via Wick's law, low bid, all of that. And one of the things that I think was interesting about that performance contract with Bob Wimmer's company is that it does present guarantees of the cost savings and of the revenues. Patty, I know you've gone to some of the monthly meetings where we have seen the companies that Navitas has associated with that have gone out and, within 100 miles of here, gone and talked to companies and who have said, yes, we're gonna bring our sludge there. Yes, we're gonna bring our whatever. So one thing is like guessing on these revenues, and me being an accountant, and I've said it many times, the only thing you can guarantee is expenses. Revenues are usually billed a guess. This was the first time that I was like, son of a gun. There are some, at least with the way the landscape looks today, doubting Thomas, I feel like I put my fingers in the holes during this process, and I saw with my own eyes and ears that those revenues are legit for the marketplace that's out there within 100 miles of this facility. And I guess I only have the upsizing. We have a 5 million gallon a day flow plant with the DEC, right? And you don't want to put 5 million gallons a day through a 5 million gallon a day limit plant. DEC is what, 80% of that is where you're pushing the limits? Is that about right?
You exceed 95% over 3/4 of the year, they like you to do a plan of what you're gonna do about it, upgrade the plant, expand capacity.
Right. So until 2 months ago, when Fairlife said they're coming to town, our plans were to just upgrade this thing as another 5 million gallon a day plant capacity. Is that correct?
Not 500, yeah.
Okay.
About another 100,000 gallons. There was a little extra capacity.
Okay. And today, with what is 17,000 EDUs, about 15,500 residences, and another 1,500 from commercial clients, we're averaging 3.1 million gallons a day flowing through our sewer system into our plant for treatment.
Correct.
So we're at about 62% capacity.
Yes and no.
Okay. Yeah, because if you get up to 80 or 90, then, right, I got you. Play along.
But,
Okay. So the slide where you said, well, here's the 14 million, that really now we got to go from 5 million to 7 million gallons a day capacity with DEC. And that's because Coca-Cola Fairlife is going to be putting 1.5 million to 1.7 million gallons a day into our sewer plant. Is that correct?
Up to 2
Up to
million.
2 million.
Up to 2 million.
Up to 2 million.
Okay. So that means, and obviously you showed in the chart the revenue that we get from the industrial rate and all that. At 7 million gallons a day capacity that we're building to now, all other factors being equal, we'll be up on an average of about 5 million gallons a day coming through. The 3.1 we're getting now plus Fairlife at full capacity, which with the DEC means we're well below their limits and we still have growth potential. Okay. All right. That's good. Can you go back 2 screens? 3 screens. All right. Because I just want to make sure that when someone looks at this, they understand that when they see the green line at 250, I think that's 250, right?
It's a little above 250, not 260.
That doesn't mean that we're saying that that's what the EDU charge between O&M and capital is going to be. That's what the increase would be. So from a point of reference, if we're at $232 a year right now in 2023, you're saying that if we just did asset renewal, our EDU charge, O&M and capital would go up to $480 a year. But in a weird way, if we do more than the $38 million asset renewal and go to the $81,500,000, the increase is the blue-purple per year, which is what you're basically around $300 total. It goes up. I mean, after the first 2 years, which, let's just call it what it is. 24 and 25 is a tough one for us on this. financial. You got money being borrowed to build the sewer plant, and while it's being built, we're not getting the revenue from septage and all that stuff. It's being built. And in parallel to that, Fairlight is building their plant, hopefully, in 2023 and 24. So they're not ready to send us any flow. Those are tough years. I think we're being very transparent about that. And I do like the fact that this was run with no grants. Any grants that come in make this better. Okay?
And just, can I add one to Bill's comment, just that, and that is a concern, obviously revenue, and we know that's sometimes an unknown, but the majority of the revenue in savings is off of Fairlight. So the majority of that revenue generation is from them, out of all of the other unknowns. So that's kind of a known, but just so, we'll have some outside waste, which there's a lot out there, but the majority is from Fairlight.
And Paul, when you were describing the breakdown of that industrial use rate in that bar on that one for that is Fairlight, that is tantamount within that to them making good on us having to build the plant to 7 million gallons a day from 5 million.
Yeah, it's covering a good part of our debt service to build that portion of the plant. We need to build to accept our capacity.
One other piece of conservatism that we've also put into this is that the revenue projections for the outside waste and the cake revenue only account for 60% of the capacity of the facility. So we did not project utilizing every piece of new capacity. This is only 60% of the potential capacity of the facility to take in outside septage or outside cake.
Which gives us outside.
Yes, so there's additional.
And really to that point, when Rick and I started this project with P&L, we were very, very conservative on those numbers and looking at what we've done and what the town has done in the past for those revenues, and really kept them tight, leaving a lot of room for upside.
Anything else on this part? Okay, anything? Paul, you want to take a crack at the next slide deck that is, as long as we talked about Coca-Cola Fairlight, we figured we'd show a little analysis of OMITA, which is, Paul will get into it, and host-community agreements. That is a key word that's flown around the town of Webster for the last 15, 20 years.
I gotta log back.
What's that?
I have to log back in.
Okay.
Go to commercial break.
I know. It is. It's yeah.
Well, you know what?
You are, and as I've said, you were the, I mean, Kenny is a great liaison to the library. But what you did as a liaison to the library, being a detective, you were. That was impressive. I'd hire you. This one of these.
Yes.
I apologize, I probably should have printed out the ones that was spreadsheet. What we just saw was the one we got in the one that
All right, we're ready. So we're gonna just, we got a
Okay.
few slides on, we're gonna discuss community pilot agreements, host community agreements, and Fairlight. Just to explain, CMEDA is the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency. They negotiate what are called pilot agreements, which are payment in lieu of taxes with businesses that come in. It does give them a tax break for a number of years. Typically, what we've seen is a 10-year program. It's called the Jobs Plus Tax Abatement. From what I understand, they do offer other programs which can go longer term, but I'd say 99% of what we've seen has been 10-year. So that's what we use for this example. So basically, the assessed value of the property is discounted over a 10-year period. So the first year you'd be discounted to 90%. So you would take the assessed value times 10% times the tax rate, and that's what you would pay. It's something that the town bills for separately. It's not part of the tax rate. Not part of the tax bills that go out, I should say. So how does a host community agreement work versus a community pilot program? Basically, the town steps in and starts a separate agreement with the property owner for the amount so that we can collect the full amount of the town tax rate based on the taxable assessed value. I guess our position has always been that the town provides the most services to the property, and it's our right, and it's worth it to the property owner to pay the full share of the taxes. Obviously, we have a police department, we have a highway department, sewer treatment. These are all things that benefit the property directly. So we took a look back at the various community agreements since 2007, and only 3 of 16 community program recipients actually executed a host agreement with the town. That was Studco, Seton Properties, Webster Auto Mall, and the Legends. The remaining did not. We did put Fairlife on top. As you can see, we're expecting the full value of Fairlife to be $650 million when it's complete in late 2025. But as of right now, Fairlife has not applied for a CMEDA, although whether they are expected to. So just for example, the property that Fairlife will be built on is about 120 acres. It's currently, the current full value is about $2 million, and it generates property tax revenue of about $6,800 for the town. Once it's fully developed, the fair market value will be, we expect it to be $650 million, which will generate, in the first year of CMEDA, with a 90% discount, it'll generate about $200,000 of revenue for the town. In year 2, 2028, we'll be at about $400,000 of revenue. So we basically assume that the assessment valuation equals projected project cost, construction is completed on schedule, and Fairlife executes a standard Jobs Plus pilot program. So there are a number of assumptions, but it's based on what we've seen historically. So just to explain, this $200,000 of revenue, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, is billed separately by the town in January of each year. They do not receive a tax bill. We bill it directly. Just to illustrate here the top 10 taxpayers in town. As it stands right now, this is based on the full market value. Xerox is number 1, RG&E number 2. This is an aggregation of a number of properties. Core Holt is number 3, and Fairlife, when they come in at 10% of their assessed value, will be at 65 million, which will put them at number 3, even though it's only 10% of their assessed value, or full value, I should say. So you can see that the major impact this is going to have, and it's just going to grow from there. Once they reach full value, they'll be at 650 million. For this slide, we've assumed that Fairlife assessment valuation equals projected project cost. So there are some assumptions, but we do know it's going to be a big number, and it'll be right up there. It'll be in the number 1 spot in short notice. That's it.
Now, Paul took one for the team on this one presenting. We have Donna Homar, the town assessor, is in the audience tonight. So depending upon any questions that the board members have about what Paul just presented, if they go beyond financial things that Paul, as our finance director, should answer, if they're more assessment-based, Donna, we have you here to pull from the bullpen and answer. So with that being said, does anybody have any questions or comments about the Comida and the host community agreement presentation?
Well, one thing that stuck out, well, I was very surprised, I should say, to see that of all these projects, that only 3 of the 16 had host agreements executed, because I was under the impression, based upon feedback I had gotten and received, and I think all of us have heard, that no projects come into Webster unless they sign a host agreement. So that was very interesting. But as you said, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. I also, we're assuming that the community agreement will be 10 years, and I think somebody mentioned that in a different locality, a very large project went at least like 15 or 20 years. So it'll be interesting to see the agreement when it's put forward. But this is a great job. Very, very good information. I appreciate it.
I've got a couple comments, if I may.
Charlie, you know you may.
First of all, John, you're right. I thought the same thing. I was surprised because we've certainly been requesting them, but again, a host community agreement is something that's entered into voluntarily.
Right.
So we'll leave it at that. We can congratulate and be appreciative of the businesses that have entered into the host agreement. I also would like to point out that there are pilot programs not only under Comida but under the private housing finance law, and we have a number of those agencies, if you will, in town, and almost all of them have given us host community.
That is correct.
CDS and Phillips Village, pretty substantial ones actually. So we have maintained those as well. So even though they are not Comida,
Right.
they are exempt by terms of pilots. However, we do have host community agreements, I think, for just about everyone in the last 10 years or so.
And Donna, and I know Paul, you were like, that can't be. These are the Comida deals in the last 15 years. 3 out of the 16 have host agreements. There are other host agreements, like you just said, Charlie, for other incentive programs and this and that. We don't, to the best of our knowledge, Matt Chatfield, you're here, Webster Economic Development Alliance. Well, number one, we are being told that Coca-Cola Fairlife will apply to Comida with some type of proposal. They have not done that as of July 12th, so we're speculating on how many years, what they're gonna ask for, this and that. Two, the type of things that you just explained, Charlie, with like CDS Monarch and all that, those type of programs, I have not heard that Coca-Cola Fairlife is
No.
qualifies for them, much less,
No, they
you know, those are housing
They would
things.
not- they would not.
So we wanted to basically just use Comida, and look at the last 15 years of the Comida deals in town. And when we researched them, 3 out of the 16 have host community agreements. Like you said, Charlie, they're voluntary. I think when you look at that list, I can only speak to one of them on that list, if you go back, Paul, because only one of these have been since I became supervisor, and that's the U of R facility on Hard Road. And U of R was very, very clear to me that there's other towns lining up to have them put a facility like they did in town. They're not going to do that, host agreement. And they said to me that's exactly what happened on Barrett Road in 2015, whatever year that was, too. And when you look at that list, I think you start to see, well, this isn't an exact science, but you're talking about Holiday Inn, Xerox, Hampton Inn is the Hilton Corporation. These are big corporations. Wegmans, big corporations. No. I guess with a straight face you could ask those corporations for a host agreement. I guess you could with a straight face. Maybe somebody did ask them with a straight face. They must have said no, if they were asked.
Actually, I don't really have a problem with asking for a host agreement. I think it's a responsible thing to do, right?
Well, the host community agreement is basically a request for the business, the company, and the property owner to contribute for the services rendered. And if it's only the town taxes, which it is, we're not negotiating on behalf of any other taxing jurisdiction, we're talking 5.2% of the property tax. So we're not doing it for the school district, we're not doing it for the county. And they get immediate services from the town. They get police, they get sewer, they get numerous other things, highway.
But I just look at some of those other projects, and when we look at the totality of it, how many of those were revenue generating to the town to the point where Fairlife would be?
And to your point, just off the top of the head, anybody see one of those projects on there that is pushing a couple $1 million of sewer annual fees?
No, they all have toilets that flush, but that's about it.
Right. And this is, and you know, and I think that far column, the total value, look at those projects compared to Coca-Cola Fairlife. That just, it's monstrous. And I've said since we were in the courting stage, if you want to call it that, back when they were Project Izzo and we had to keep a real lid on who they were. We didn't even know who they were. That it's just, we don't have a precedent. I don't even know, Xerox, when they came here in the 50s or 60s, I don't even know if that's an appropriate precedent for how large this is. And if you approach them the same way you approach all the other projects, which we, I think, are doing a good job of not approaching it that way. We've never hired Woods Oviatt to oversee seeker on some developer coming into town, have we?
No.
We've never gone to MRB and said, can you help us with looking at the plans and the sketches? Well, actually, Bill, I'll ask you that, you're the engineer, has the town ever done that to oversee and take a second look at some developer coming to town, the 100-house subdivision?
No, not since I've been here.
Okay. And I don't blame them. Because a 100-house subdivision it's not bad. That's massive. No, I think we're doing this differently, and we need to do it differently. And, John, I will tell you this, I'll respectfully agree to disagree with you that I'm not gonna go with a straight face and ask the Coca-Cola executives that I've been working with, and Matt, you've been working with, with a straight face, and say, we'd like you to get into a host agreement.
Yeah, I wasn't
And we,
speaking
we
directly
you know,
about Coca-Cola, I was just, as a general
oh,
rule of thumb,
I agree with
I
that.
don't have it.
I agree with that.
I don't,
Yes.
I agree, I'm on the same page
Right.
with respect to this project.
Gotcha.
So as a general rule.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I kind of like the host agreement.
Right.
And I didn't do any research with Donna in the last couple of days on the other CDS Monarch and those things because I don't know what they are. I know there are other host agreements and Paul but they're not committed. So I don't know enough to be dangerous about what is it about CDS Monarch? Is it a housing thing? Is it a whatever that Coca-Cola would never go for that type of whatever they got?
We can discuss that later. I don't think we need to get into
But is it apples to oranges comparison?
Yeah, it's really not the same.
Okay.
It's a pilot, that's the only difference. It's a
Right.
pilot program, it's permitted by statute.
Gotcha.
Pilot has to be permitted by statute, it's not.
Yeah. And one thing I will say as we were putting this together is that trying to figure out what, God willing, Donna, you're still our assessor when they get their C of O going into 26, all right? We haven't even seen their building plans and this and that. We're going by the fact that Coca-Cola is saying this is a $650 million plan. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's $650 million of buildings, assets, whatever, or if half of that is machinery. You know what I mean? We don't know. We don't have those details. So we use the $650 million number because we're not going to audit how much they spend on building the thing. Somehow you go in when they're done and figure out through the laws and whatever what they're assessed for. It could come in at half of $650 million. And I'll tell you what, if you go back a screen, thanks, Paul. No, I guess go forward a screen.
Yeah.
So you see that one right there? Let's say that Donna, who follows the law, very respected assessor, teaches at the state level, whatever. Let's say it comes in at 325 million because of, I don't know, other these contents and all that stuff. Then you take that $200,000 and that's $100,000. I think the important thing is to look at that compared to the $6,858 that we got on grass. I feel pretty confident whatever you assess that for, which you will do by the book, I have all the confidence in the world, I'll bet you that we're going to be getting more than $6,858 from 100 acres of grass. Oh. Enough said. Anything else, ladies and gents?